Well, James, we're starting with this huge story about the feud between Elon Musk, Brazil, X, the fight over disinformation, what constitutes bannable disinformation, what people can do legally, what people should do morally and ethically about disinformation. X is no longer available in Brazil. If you use a VPN to try to access X, you can be subject to fines of like $9,000 a day. So you have a breakdown on what exactly has transpired over the last few days, and this stuff is changing by the minute, but a landmark case, I think, in the global war over disinformation. What the hell is going on?
Well, I think that's a very good way of framing it. This very much is a global war, but the latest example is in Brazil, where the Supreme Court ordered to ban Elon Musk's X for failure to comply with court orders to suspend certain accounts. This has been a long-running battle between Musk and Supreme Court Justice-elect Moraes, and it has finally culminated in this reinstated and rebacked decision to ban Elon Musk's X out of Brazil.
So this is about suspending accounts. That's the sort of meat of the matter?
Exactly, and that's literally all that it is. But the incredible thing is, it's not just Brazil where this kind of thing is happening, but it's justices like Moraes that are very much taking this war to Elon Musk and almost using this sort of quite flimsy reason as justification or pretext to then come after the big company, which he views as a threat to the liberal order or the liberal establishment because of Russ's alleged right-wing turn. It also comes as 3 articles in The Guardian came out last month calling for Elon Musk's arrest for not violating Brazilian laws, but for violating the laws of European countries. Now, what's interesting here is that Europe faces a much bigger free speech problem than the US, and arguably Brazil too. Just last week, the Telegram CEO Pavel Durov was arrested in France for something very similar to what Elon Musk is being found guilty of in Brazil: not complying with requests for content moderation and data disclosure.
Complicity, essentially. It comes down to this idea that if you run a platform that is being abused, you can be accused, the offense can be ratcheted up to arrest level because it is complicity. You're not the person who is encouraging the speech directly. You're not saying, please use my platform to spread lies or whatever. You're just literally operating the platform.
It's difficult to escape the political dimension of this. When Elon Musk was the liberal darling, Tesla CEO, bringing electric cars to the West, there were very few of these kind of threats that were coming through. Now, obviously, he didn't run X. He was much less vocal on Twitter at the time. But since he started pivoting to the right, and his explicit endorsement of Trump is testament to that, the liberals, even within the US, have really come after him in quite a big way. And this runs all the way up to Kamala Harris and her vice president, Tim Walz, or running mate, Tim Walz. Let's just remind ourselves, it was a few weeks ago that he told MSNBC that misinformation was not free speech. It would be within the rights of government to start censoring on that basis. So although Musk might be protected by the US Constitution, it's very easy to see how this might slip away from him if there is a Democrat in charge.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. This is going to sound like a crazy comparison, James, but I was looking all over London the last few days for an equivalent of Gatorade. I couldn't find like Gatorade, and some of my friends were having like the European or at least the UK version of different candies, and it just tastes different. And it's because there are different regulations, obviously, in what kind of ingredients can go into food. So it doesn't matter if you make Sour Patch Kids one way in the United States, you have to change them if you want to sell them in the UK or in EU countries. And that sounds like a crazy comparison, but it's apt. If you are running a US free speech platform, you have to comply with regulations that are, by the way, becoming increasingly global. I mean, you see like the World Economic Forum wants global standards for how we police disinformation. So if you want to have a platform that operates one way in the US, or for example, China, where there's not Twitter or Google, you have to comply with different regulations, and it becomes a patchwork. And I think Elon Musk has had trouble in places like India, where he's complied with government requests for censorship demands. That's been reported by Ryan Grimm, among others, and that is a very real problem. But if he wants to genuinely fight against places like Brazil, all for it, because these are not standards that should, these are standards that if you are the United States of America, you should encourage other countries to uphold, because we believe they are good and that they are just and that they create healthier societies. Instead, we have comments from Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, at least in the past. I mean, Kamala Harris' administration was the administration that pressured Mark Zuckerberg, as he discussed just last week in that letter. That is the Biden-Harris administration. Tim Walz in the past has said similarly ridiculous things about how you don't have a right to disinformation. I mean, I guess I'm on Elon Musk's side in this one, even if I don't think he's been the most consistent.
There's a clip circulating on X at the moment which revisits a comment made by Kamala Harris earlier in her first presidential run in 2019, in which she complains about the fact that Musk or people on Twitter have unfettered access to millions of people to just speak freely. And it's as if this concept of speaking to your followers without any kind of censorship line is such an alien concept to the left now. And it's a very strange development to see where this has all gone.
He has lost his privileges and it should be taken down. And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
Yeah, it's weird. It's totally mainstream. And the Free Press this morning pointed out that some of the free speech organizations, the ACLU, PEN America, at least as of the time they sent their newsletter on Tuesday morning, had not weighed in on what happened to X in Brazil. And again, this is over suspension of accounts. As you pointed out, James, it's easy to get lost and to assume, well, this was, over legitimate propaganda efforts that involved actual bigotry or blah, 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 which is moderated differently in different countries. The US has different standards, obviously, than other places do, which Prince Harry once said, I think he called the First Amendment bonkers, something like that. It is genuinely different than what happens in other countries. It reminds me of, Julian Assange was charged with the Espionage Act for allegedly helping a source hack into a database. And it's again this idea of just pinning people down with that charge of complicity. If they had anything to do with something wrong that someone did in their midst, and it's a great way to nail people when they haven't actually done anything wrong. You just broaden the standards of wrongdoing to include complicity. It's actually fairly terrifying how you have people like Robert Reich, U.S. Clinton administration official, writing in The Guardian that people need to figure out what to do with Elon Musk, and there's not outrage from PEN America and the ACLU. Instead, it seems to be like cheerleading for people like Robert Reich.